Race one of the weekend in the GT4 European Series here at Spa-Francorchamps set to get underway. It is going to be a race that takes us possibly into the darkness. It is also going to be a race that will be really interesting to see how free of stoppages, interruptions and dramas it is, because it's a full field of cars, one or two of which have got penalties for infractions in qualifying, like the Jim Plough Jean-Luc Boberlic Mercedes that changed a battery and has been put to the back of the grid because that shouldn't have happened. We've lost a Porsche. Andreas Mayel crashed Vincent Andronico's car very heavily in Q2. That is off the grid as well. But a problem all weekend really has been that now with these new gravel traps, people slither wide, get caught in the gravel, and it is either in a qualifying session a red flag or in a race a safety car period, and we'll wait and see how that pats out over the course of this next 1 hour. David Addison and Ben Constanduris are trackside. The grid is filling up. It's going to be a rolling start, and it is going to be, of course, a race with a pit window at 25 to 35 minutes with 121 seconds being the pit stop time. And let's go down to the grid because Gemma Scott is there at the front, and she has drivers with her.
Loic, you're part of the pole-sitting car here, of course, alongside Leclerc. This is your first time in Spa, your first season in GT4, and you only started racing last year. Exactly. What did you start racing in?
It started with the Orchid Racing team, the Porsche GT3 Cup Switzerland, and Antoine is my coach there. And then last year it went pretty well, and decided to bring me here to the GT4. And we had a rough start of the season, to be honest with you. Big crash in Imola, and then Puerto Rico with a penalty we shouldn't have had, but yeah. We managed to get a lead and take the win in Misano last month, and now Anton did a mega lap in Q1, and I hope it just gets up turn 1 with the lead, and just slips away from the field, and when I take over the car, I just have to do my job and get the car back home in first place.
So he needs to get you a nice big gap, and then you can take over and bring it home. Well, it's a fantastic start to your career to be here in GT4, a fantastic championship as well, and your first time in here. Do you like the circuit?
Yeah, I know the circuit. I've never driven on the circuit, but it's a great racetrack, one of the nicest one in the world, and yeah, it's a blast. Actually.
It is indeed. Yeah. Well, let's hope you have a blast and get through to the podium. Thanks a lot. You too.
Look, Villiger then, who will do the second stint today, but he will be the start driver tomorrow. And understandably, in this weather, the fans, Jupiler in hand, have stayed to watch the race. And Ben, this really is going to be dramatic, isn't it? Especially with Jim Plough starting at the back of the grid.
He's just described what every racing driver would like their teammate to do. You go up the road, do all the hard work. I'll take over the car and be nice and comfortable. I'm not sure that it's going to work out that way, because with the gravel traps and with the challenge of Spa, I'm sure we're going to see far more drama that's going to interrupt the progress of these first drivers at the very, very least.
So the grid is pretty much formed. It's going to be, of course, a rolling start. And we've got the final few minutes of the countdown. Tyre trolleys on the grid, and the teams getting ready then for that formation lap to get underway. The start driver is the driver that set the qualifying time. Which driver? Max Kronberg is a man to watch over the course of this race as well. Let's hear his thoughts going into it. He's on the grid with Gemma.
Max, down here on the start line, of course, things feel rather calm, rather chilled, but certainly not for your teammate here.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, he's had a great qualifying, position the car on P2, so of course, like, the goal is to push and to bring the car back on P1 for him.
Looking down here into turn 1, of course, you've got that slight incline before it drops down to the right. Yeah. What does it feel like to be driving into that first corner?
Yeah, I think it's quite exciting because you have a little bit of banking there, so you can really like break down the car, like push it into the corner, and then throttle for the greatest corner of Rouge.
Do you go flat out through Eau Rouge?
No, we can't. Maybe one time, but not more often than one time. Yeah.
Well, have a great race, and thank you for talking to us.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
And that's an interesting point, because it is Eau Rouge is now seen so easy for so many categories of car, but these GT4 cars with less aero and more reliance upon mechanical grip are still not able to take Eau Rouge flat. So they are just off the maximum speed, and that's why it's sometimes more of a challenge in the GT4 European Series than you find in GT GT3. They're a very different way of driving, getting the best out of the car.
And also, of course, in GT4, you've got perhaps a greater number of AMs, or certainly less experienced drivers who haven't got that confidence to push without the aero. So that's another limiting factor. You don't want to be a hero. You want to just get through safely and gain confidence. So the grid is being cleared. We are into the final 5 minutes before the formation lap gets underway at this 7-kilometre long circuit. 37 there, which is the Porsche that is going to have Michael Laboda to start. And the GT4 European Series continuing, of course, with its double-header format. We've been to Imola, to Paul Ricard and to Misano, and now ready to do battle here as Rui Meijers and Owen Bastar, very quick Audi drivers, look forward to their race getting underway.
That 37 Porsche is an AM. So that's an incredibly, incredibly far up the grid for what is effectively 2 AM drivers sharing that car. It's on the second row of the grid, miles ahead of any of the other AMs. And remember, they are effectively 3-4 different championships within this race, because we've also invited GT4 Scandinavia here with the McLaren 288 leading that charge. But to have the AM up in 4th position, of course, it was the more AM drivers qualifying in the first session, so you're more likely to see an AM car higher up the field. But still, that's impressive, because there are drivers that are silver.
That's right. So, yeah, it was a very, very good effort. Of course, the sessions earlier on were slightly interrupted, a bit fragmented, so there's an element of getting the lap in at the right time. There, one of the Toyotas. Now, the other question over Toyotas was whether 66 was going to take the start, wasn't it? Because that was a car that was damaged ultimately by Antoine Potti. Lost his best lap time as a result. And
it should be very much in the middle of the pack.
It's shown as having come to the grid, or should have come. You can see it out the window, there it is. So number 66 Toyota has been rebuilt. That had a lot of frontal damage and missed Q2 as a result. So CMR has been very busy getting that car race ready.
We also have a few penalties, not necessarily left over from previous events, like we see usually sort of second race effects. We don't have that, but we do, as you were mentioning, David, in qualifying, penalties for infringements before this event.
Yes, a couple of drivers took part contractually in a Mercedes organised track day on Monday in a GT4 spec car, and that was deemed to have tested. So they've been given penalties as a consequence of that, stop-go penalties. We've got one car missing off the grid as well, haven't we? The Gabriela Yilkova, Robert Haub, Drago Racing Team, Mercedes, absent. Number 15 of Luke Ibanez could be a car to watch, I think. We know that Ibanez is quick, very, very good indeed at Misano, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Mercedes were very strong there. The Aston Martins basically strong elsewhere. But from what we've seen here, it does seem as though the Alpines seem to have good pace, both in the practice session that did run, because free practice 1 did not. It was cancelled effectively after damage on the first couple of minutes of the session. But free practice 2 was run by... didn't quite see what was on his steering wheel. That's a shame. But yes,
look away now if you're of a sensitive disposition. the Rossi fan club have been on the beer all day. Yes.
Alpine on the front row, on the pole position, and also looking strong in race 2 as well. So we haven't seen them come to the fore yet, but a very different looking top 10 to what we've experienced so far in GT4 Europe.
So grid is being cleared, and the formation lap is about to get underway then. The leading car, as it is, the Audi at the front of the grid. I've got to say, this is absolutely wide open, this race, partly because of the jumble nature of the grid, partly because there are so many competitive combinations, and partly because we just do not know, really, whether we're going to get through this without any interruptions.
I always worry with a jumbled up grid. There is that space from the number 4 machine that should be there. It is not. A jumbled up grid means that there's overtaking needed and battling to be done, and especially when the field is so compressed, as we have with our rolling starts. And you've got Rouge to contend with, you've got Radeon to contend with on colder tyres, so they're not going to provide the grip that you might necessarily expect on the first lap. Conditions are fantastic, by the way, both on the track and in the air. We haven't had rain all weekend, and the track's being swept between races to make sure it's very, very clean. But with the first big braking zone being Les Combes, I'm a bit concerned.
Yeah, could be a bit leery this. Antoine Leclerc will start on pole position with Hendrik Still lining up alongside on the second row of the grid. It is going to be the car of Jean-Baptiste Mela and Mikael Loboda in the AM. Pole sitter is going to be alongside the third row. Rui Meerhaas lines up alongside Simon Gachet, and the fourth row is where you find Etienne Shelley and team patron at JSB, Julien Brichet, alongside. Greg Gilbert is on the next row of the grid. He will line up ninth alongside Luc Ibanez. Then it's Kenton Cook and Pierre Sonsinena for the Team Spirit Racing and Autosport GP squads, respectively. Aston Martin ahead of Alpine. 13th on the grid is Bekke Besler, and Mike David Ortman lines up alongside him on row 7. Row 8 is where you've got Alex Fontana, who should be a man in a hurry. Tom Canning lines up alongside him, ahead of then Daniel Roos and Michael Schrei lining up on the outside of row 9. Row 10 has the Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden entry of Emil Skaras on the inside, but missing is Gabriele Ilkova, unless that car joins in from the pits. It's Stanislav Savronov and Nico Verdonk on the 11th row. The 12th row, Christophe Amon and the repaired Toyota of Antoine Potti, one to watch. The 13th row, Benjamin Lariche lines up alongside Marcus Lundstras, ahead of Gus Bowers and then Dante Raponge. On row 15, there's Ralph Kelleners and Philip Vava, ahead of then the Victor Bouveng Mbila Racing entry, and for Akodis ASP, Benjamin Ricci on the 16th row. On the 17th row of the grid, Wilfried Casarbon for AGS Events and Alexandra Papadopoulos alongside. In the 18th row, there is Lucas Sundal and Benoit Lison for Team Full Motorsport. The 19th row, Jagish Gedik, and solo driver for this weekend, Greg Faisal for Santalot Racing. Row 20, there's Vincent Guizy starting alongside Max Trasoldi. On row 21, there is Alban Lagrange and Jean-Luc Behetz for the Sellerslag Racing Team. The 22nd row, Christophe Bourret lines up alongside Pierre-Laurent Figuier. And on the 23rd row, there is the car of Frederick Danner, and also from the Scandinavian Championship that's part of this race, Harry McDonald, the New Zealander. Row 24, Jeremy Lesoudier lines up alongside Hakan Riknes. The 25th row is Adam Carroll. Now, he's going to be a man to watch. Big hurry. Alexander Hartvig is alongside him. Noah Andy is on the penultimate row with Tom Verdier for company, and then Jim Pla on the very back row of the grid with Gustav Bard lining up alongside him. What progress can Jim Pla make? Because he's got a lot of it to do.
The number 44 Hartvig Porsche needing permission to start the race, because they did do a qualifying lap, but it was outside the 107% mark, and therefore they had to apply to start this race. They had to set a lap time because there was mechanical problems for the two AGS Aston Martins, the number 7 and the number 80. They don't have to apply to get into the race because they didn't set a time. So
right, they didn't do a slow time, they just didn't do a time.
Yeah, okay. So interesting quirk of the regulations. But as you said, Adam Carroll is one to watch at the tail of the field. Jim Platt, very much one to watch. And both of those AGS Astons, when they have run well, and we've seen a few issues with them across the season, they are right in the top. They should be right in the top 10. But Aston Martin, the favoured brand for most of the year, the best of them is Kenton Cook, who is, what, 10th, 8th, something like that? Yeah.
So the car's now down to the chicane. Remember this pit window, 25 to 35 minutes, and the drivers then about to wriggle their way into the chicane, where the leading car, as it is, will peel into the pits. The race cars will power up towards the line, and then the race director, Steve Burns, takes a sharp intake of breath and hopes he doesn't have to shout safety car for the first, well, hour, really, of the next part of his life, because the last thing we need is yet another interrupted race. It really does distort people's ability to have a proper fight here. The cars stream through the chicane, making the run now up towards the timing line, and a very anticipatory start, you might say, from Antoine Leclerc, because he was well ahead of Hendrik Still when they got to the timing line, but he's away. Hendrik Still seemed to lag rather than Leclerc jump, but in towards La Source they go. They're still pouring out of the chicane in the background. This is the first pinch point of the lap. Antoine Leclerc leads them out of it. The other side, 1 or 2 running wide and even wider. 2 wheels hook into the gravel and a spin in the background, and one of the Audis has gone around. Thankfully, has not hit anything solid. Then tries to rejoin in the traffic. No, there's no gap. Wait. Down through the Eau Rouge sequence they come, but up at the top of La Source, the Audi that has rotated does get going. It's Michael Blanchemont and Christophe Hamon's car Well, it's going to fall to the back of the field, but that could have been a whole lot worse. Right, race leaders as one. 3 for the lead. Look, coming up towards Les Combes. It's just going to be Leclerc in the Alpine, but he's under attack from the Supra on the outside.
Where's that Supra come from? That's from the 3rd or 4th row. Surin aboard that machine and in 2nd position, now being dropped to 3rd, but lots of contact further back and a lot of debris. An Alpine off on the right-hand side with a whole front end missing. Wheels are still going round, but that is Jean-Baptiste Mella with a heavily damaged Auto GP car, and I'm afraid we're going to have to do some tidying up there.
Yeah, so the reigning Alpine champion in strife then, as the cars dive downhill. Etienne Shelley in the Supra dropped back into 3rd place, but it all got very leery, as you described, up at Les Combes. So now it is Antoine Leclerc in the lead. Henrik still 2nd, and in 3rd place, Etienne Shelley, a really good first few corners. And that drama up at Les Combes then has taken 1 or 2 out of the race. There's another car in the background, look, using the motorcycle cut through on the inside as it limps back to the pit lane with damage. Trying to identify that. There's another delayed car limping off the road up at the top of Speaker's Corner and parked, so we're going to lose a couple on this lap.
I think the parked car was Jean-Baptiste Mella, who tried to continue, not knowing necessarily how much damage he'd done to the front of the car, because he couldn't have seen it. Christophe Hamon was the driver aboard the Audi that swapped ends. Oh, and there's a bent Aston Martin. That's Kenton Koch, isn't it? So he was right at the sharp end. So contact, presumably. Mella, we also had a delayed Luberda, so our AM entries drops down the field.
Yeah.
Brichet is missing.
And we'll confirm more at the end of the lap. But big, bold effort there. The Aston Martin with 2 wheels on the grass in another big hurry. That is the car of Marcus Lundstras trying to get up the inside as they come down towards the chicane. It was coming out of Blanchimont in Q2 that we lost Andreas Meyer on cold tyres as he went around. Antoine Potier is on a mission as well in the other Supra. Look, coming up on the outside line there. Gets out his elbows. He's going to get run out wide. And up the curb he heads then. Through the chicane, 1 for the pit lane as the leaders come by. It is Antoine Leclerc, ahead of Henrik Still. 3rd is Etienne Shelley. 4th is Rui Meerhaas. 5th is Simon Gachet. 6th is Greg Gilbert, and they're all in a line.
Unbelievably mixed up field. And that was Nico Verdonk coming in to serve his 30-second penalty for doing that contractually agreed track day at the start of the week. That's his penalty, a 30-second stop-go. So getting it done straight away, and great work by the marshals up at Les Combes, I believe, because we do not have yellow flags. We are still green flag racing, which means they've cleared out whatever is up there, and we've got racing all the way to them.
Absolutely, and here comes Etienne Shelley having another go to get past Henrik Still. Leclerc, the very experienced Antoine Leclerc, moves across on the inside. He keeps the race lead. Etienne Shelley is up the curb, and Henrik Still gets out his elbows as well and fends him off. So Antoine Leclerc still leads the way, but a real battle pack for the race lead. 3 of them as one.
Roy Meerhaus in this first of the Sansalon Audis, looking very sideways through Les Combes. The back end trying to swap ends into Bruxelles as well, so not looking particularly comfortable, but fast at the moment in 4th position. Greg Gilbert in 6th position, the 2nd of the Audis, sandwiching Simon Gachet, and here comes Gachet trying to get past.
Slippery surface flag to warn a bit of debris and the gravel on the road. Here is Gachet to get the run on Meerhaas then. The Israeli driver can't defend against the Frenchman, and Simon Gachet charges through on the inside. It's going to be interesting now to see how long it takes him to catch up with these 3. Henrik Still goes one side, then dives to the inside, going into the pit back. That's brave. He mows the lawn on the inside, elbows out. Through he comes. Wow, that was quite a move by Henrik Still. I'm not entirely sure there was a Cayman-sized gap when he started, but there was when he finished.
Unbelievable. Made some space on the grass, got himself dirty, but thankfully the circuit going right and then left, and he gave himself an advantage and has checked out as well. So really felt like he was being held up by Anton Leclerc in the middle part of that lap. Felt like he was being hassled too much by the Toyota, and so had to make that pass done now.
Look at Gachet, he's almost with them. He's only been ahead of Meerhaus for a few corners, and now Etienne Shelley breezes past the Alpine as well. Someone's probably going to point and say you had 2 wheels on the grass there and you gained an advantage, Henrik Still. But it was a very brave manoeuvre, all of that. As now, look, Gachet lines up to have a go at Leclerc. The Alpine is fading against perhaps these more powerful cars around it. So out of the chicane, up to the line. Henrik Still, it is now, in the Porsche that leads. Etienne Shelley in the Supra, the Toyota GL Supra 2nd. 3rd, for how much longer, discuss, is Antoine Leclerc. And then behind him is Simon Gachet, ahead of Rui Meerhaas. And in 6th place, it is Greg Gilbert.
Yeah, ahead of Berke Bessler at the BMW, best of them. Really good progress, and fastest lap of the race so far from Berke, with a little bit of space to play with, I believe. The delayed Camaro that we saw in the pit lane also looking strong, although I don't see him on my timing screen. It says Dante Rapongi is down in 21st position, so there he is. Oh, I know what I was looking at. No, it was Ortman's Aston Martin that has a weird graphic along the front that makes it look like something else. That's where I was getting confused.
Right, now here comes Shelley, look to have a go at the race lead up towards Lecombe. They're certainly getting away now from Leclerc, who is the cork in the bottle, isn't he? He's got Gachet, Meohas, Gilbert all queued up behind him. 110 is Pierson Sinena, who is just being able to fend off the Spanish driver Lucky Bagnez as they wriggle their way now out of Lecombe. The Mercedes looks the bigger, looks the mightier car. How's Adam Carroll getting on? He's 35th. Jim Pla is 34th. They've got a lot of work to do yet.
I would have thought this is where the Alpine is strong, through this middle part of the lap, making up space where it can be more agile than some of the bigger cars. It's certainly not winning any pace along the long, fast Kemmel Straight and dragging itself up the hill and also through the fast Blanchimont. But is a fast car, it seems, this weekend at Spa. Unfortunately, we've just lost them all.
Well, a flash of the lights from Etienne Kelly to try to get Henrik Still to crack under the pressure. And Simon Gachet comes one side and then the other to try to terrorise the little Alpine out of the way. He is conscious that Rui Meerhaus is coming back at him. You're right about Beke Besler in the better of the BMWs out of the Borusan Automotive team, because that also is closing up. But now Henrik Still is being caught very definitely by Etienne Kelly. Replay of the start as the cars steam down towards La Source. Now, whether this shows us the spin, we'll have to wait and see. Now there, look, the Alpine was certainly a row ahead of the Porsche, but was that Henrik Still not being rapidly away, or was it Antoine Leclerc being a bit anticipatory? This is from another angle, and the Porsche moves across. Look at that getaway from Etienne Shelley's Supra, being able to line up a really good run down towards the first corner, through which they turn, and it was towards the back of the field, wasn't it, that we had the rotating Audi.
Well, it looks as though Christophe Hamon, who comes into shot in just a second, is on his own because there was so much field spread at the start of the race, and I think he might... Oh no, there's someone's just come across him on the right-hand side. There was contact.
Yeah, a little bit of bodywork onto the road, but then that was the scary bit, trying to rejoin. And eventually he got the message and thought, oh, I better stop and wait for everybody else to come by, but that could have been very nasty. He's working his way back into contention. Now what happened here? One car, it was the Alpine that got sideways, drilled the Aston and fired that into somebody else. So that was Jean-Baptiste Meller getting it wrong and harpooning the Kenton Cook Aston, wasn't it?
Yeah, lost it on his all on his own, just under not as much pressure in the tyres as he would have liked. But has absolutely wiped out the front end of that Alpine. So, as we spoke about, the second race is early tomorrow morning, so that's a long night for Autosport GP.
And here's the lead change imminent as Etienne Shelley comes up to have a go at Henrik Still, and they lean on each other. Henrik is absolutely determined to lead to the pit stop window. Trouble is, so is Etienne Shelley. The Porsche sits in the middle of the road. The way that he got the lead was pretty brave and robust. Well, now he's having it done unto him. And look, Leclerc is back at the races, and he's brought Simon Gachet with him. Etienne Shelley goes for a gap on the outside into turn 9, and up the inside goes the Alpine, and Shelley is off the road and in the gravel. And that, surely, if he can't get out the other side, it's going to be a safety car. But he just didn't seem to turn, almost as though a tyre had gone down.
Well, there's a possibility, isn't it? Because it was quite a shove. The contact between the two was a big wiggle moment from Simon Gachet as well. I wonder whether there might well have been a tyre down. But it was also something we saw from Antoine Potti in qualifying. Get offline there, and it doesn't seem like there's any way of getting back. Yellow flags are out.
Yeah. So it rather looks... Oh, we're going to go full course yellow in 20 seconds then. So full course yellow.
Full course yellow in 10 seconds.
That's the voice of the race director, Steve Burns. So the race is going to be neutralised.
5, 4,
but although we're not seeing it, that rather answers the question, doesn't it? The car's in the gravel.
Full course yellow now.
So full course yellow to neutralise the pace. And that's the answer. So the Toyota off the road. So it could have been a tyre, could have been a breakage after that contact, but it just did not seem to turn until the last moment, and then it didn't have enough momentum anyway to get through the gravel.
It would make sense with the contact between the two. So turns in, quite hefty elbow, and it looks as though the steering might actually be broken there. Won't feel it through here because it's a right-hand turn. So if the steering's broken on the inside wheel, it won't make an effect until you go this way where you're relying upon it, and it's just stopped turning. So I wonder whether either, as you say, puncture or damaged steering.
Well, it puts the car into the gravel, out of the race, but I would imagine this will be a relatively lengthy full course yellow followed by a safety car to get things back up to speed, up to temperature.
Yeah. Do you wonder if you have to do that? Obviously at the start of the season when we were at Imola, it was cold, and so you needed to do that. But when you've got such high temperatures, 28 degrees air temperature this evening.
It's just become the norm.
Yeah, okay.
And, the regulations are that you can go faster under the safety car than a full course yellow anyway. Yeah. So in a way, it's done for safety reasons, because no matter what your ambient is, you're still going to get the temperatures up better through doing a safety car lap or two than just going after full course yellow, because the tyres are absolutely stone cold, really.
As the Americans say, though, safety cars breed safety cars.
I couldn't agree more. I've heard it said in touring car racing.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. And
don't say that. Can you imagine it?
At the moment, we've got nice gaps between everybody. And so if we went back to racing now, we wouldn't necessarily attract the chaos that we would do if we bunched them all back together.
Well, yes, there is that element of keeping the gaps, but also the fear is that with the tyres colder and we're having lost pressure as well, it's safer to get them at a quicker speed. But you're right, to do that, they have to all get into a line. And so that is going to get the cars all in one group. There is the safety car, so we are going to go safety car conditions. And so the field... I mean, the full course yellow works very well because, you know, within 20 seconds, everybody is slowed right down. You've got them all under control. Get the point of that. And there is the recovery vehicle ready to hoik the Supra out of the gravel bed. It's not been a good day for Toyotas, has it? And it's at that corner. And
it's interesting because that corner is one of those corners that didn't have a gravel trap before and has never really been much of a place where cars come to lie. But we have had quite a bit of had a bit of interest down there, and as you say, Toyotas in that in the gravel trap this time rather than the tyre barrier. But all perhaps, well, is it as his own doing? Are we investigating that contact between the two of them? Because it was quite aggressive. You described it as a lean. I would describe it as an elbow. It was a bit more of a jab.
A jab, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure the team will have a thought about it. Let's have another look. Hendrick still moves across. I think he just went for the line and the Toyota was there. I don't think it was deliberate. I think he was, racing for the line.
Yeah, I agree.
And if it did do damage, well, it was collateral damage, really.
Going through the shot there was the Aston Martin that has racing written between the two headlights. And it looks like the logo that Hummer have on the front of their cars. It doesn't at all. That is an Aston Martin. It looks like an Aston Martin because of the way that the colours follow the splitter. But that Ortman car doesn't at all, from a distance. That's my excuse anyway.
This is I Spy GT4 cars, written by Ben Durst. Available in all good bookshops.
No, it's about to come into shot here. See how they haven't coloured in the lips of the splitter, and therefore from a distance you don't see them so much, and you've got the obvious line which is between the two headlights.
Okay. Safety car procedure. Safety car procedure.
So the race director calls for the safety car. The pace can be quickened, and let's just have a look to the outside of turn 9. Yep, got it clear. So you might get away with one lap. Could you get away with half a lap, given the length of the circuit? Bring them in at the end of it. I think you probably need to do a full lap, don't you?
Well, it depends, because again, we did see this where the safety car didn't wait to bunch everybody up and just went. That was in Paul Ricard, I think, because they're not concerned about bunching the pack up necessarily.
No.
So the track's clear, so why not? Get the lights off as soon as the lights will come off around this area now.
Yeah, you just need to get them to go quicker and then release them. But yeah.
Then have you achieved the temperature thing you need?
Precisely. Yeah, that's why I say you might need to give them a full lap. Anyway, we'll find out in a moment. We're about 10 minutes off the window opening, and it is still Hendrick still in the lead from Antoine Leclerc. And then Simon Gachet in third. Jim Pla watch up to 29th. Adam Carroll watch. The Greystone GT McLaren is now 31st. And we've lost Etienne Shelley, we've lost Kenton Cook, we've lost Jean-Baptiste Mela, and we never had Gabriela Ilkova out of the race. Or not even in the race. So safety car staying out, not aware that it's going to be brought in. It's probably a bit too late now anyway, isn't it? So it'll be one more lap behind the safety car at least, and then we should be back up and running. Ideally, the race director wants it in before the pit window, because if you've got a pit window that has to be delayed, it all becomes very messy.
Best of the Swedish runners is the McLaren of Roos. That car here in the 24H Series race in April. So plenty of track time that they achieved by doing that, and actually won the GT4 category. Or were going to win it, but then the engine blew. think, as I remember it. But they were performing very, very well. And there it comes through the shot. They've got like a British-Swedish flag on the roof of that car, in a nod to the fact that they are Swedish, but the car is British.
Right. Okay.
There it goes, just through shot. And they are a good couple of cars ahead of the next best of our Swedish entries, which is that one, the Toyota Gazoo Racing Sweden. I keep saying Swedish because actually, even though it's the Scandinavian GT Championship, they are all Swedish entries.
Yes, with a New Zealander in one car.
Yeah.
And Daniel Roos, we did see many years ago in
Safety car in this lap. Safety car in this lap.
Safety car in this time. We did see in the early days of Block Pan Endurance on occasions. A very rapid young Swedish driver he was then. Right, so weaving around, getting the temperature back into the tires, getting the pressures back up. We'll go racing, and we're going to have something like 6 minutes or so really before the pit window opens. That's Rui Miohaas goes through now. Of course, what this has done for Henrik Still and others is reduce the amount of impact that they can make for their slower co-driver, because they've got fewer racing laps available now before they have to bail for the pit lane. So they'll go to the end of the window anyway, but really their stint starts now in terms of building a gap.
Yeah, and that's where the wishes of Loris Vergio on the grid were wishes and wishes alone, because it was, I don't know, it wasn't inevitable that this was going to happen, but I think with the amount of cars we've got on the grid, with the way that Spa is, I think it was quite possible that we're going to see a safety car. And we're quite lucky not to have got a safety car from the first incident, because there was a lot of bits of Alpine up there at Le Combe, and they managed to clear them within the lap. So marshals would have been out on track picking up bits of car before the cars came round for the next lap.
And the field weaves its way then now down towards the pith path. So Henrik Still eager to get on with this. Still, we've got something like 50 cars running. Nico Verdonk, after that very lengthy stop-go penalty early on, a lot of work to do, and he's helped by this because he's caught people up. Daniel Roos, then the leader of GT4 Scandinavia within this race. Spa isn't the most obvious place for a Scandinavian race,
really.
but the drivers relishing the opportunity of being somewhere, well, warm. Not often Spa can be described as warm, but it's a very different circuit for them.
Leading the championship by 10 points is the number 10 machine of Gus Bowers, down in 18th position right now, third of the Aston Martins. Not such a good weekend in Misano last time out, but very, very strong in Imola with 2 victories and with 2 decent scores in the second round at Paul Ricard as well. So some work to do for our championship contenders. But even Pro Sport not that high up. No, Ortmann in 6th position.
For the moment, but it could all change, couldn't it, as we are about to go racing then. The car's down now into the chicane, and so Henrik Still is going to control the pace. The safety car in the pits. We go racing once more. Window not yet open, so we've got a few more racing laps before people will start to head for the pit road. Look at the traffic stretching all the way back through Blanchimont as they zigzag their way up out of the chicane. And now we go racing once more. Green flags fly. Again, of course, the timing line further back than the start line on that pit straight. So the timing line beam is just as they come out of the chicane down towards La Source. We're racing again, and it is Henrik Still ahead of Antoine Leclerc and Simon Gachet third.
And a nice queue of cars as well, so there'll be plenty of slipstreams to be playing with. Perhaps not an overtaking opportunity at the bottom of the hill. You've got to let the car climb the hill. Hope you've carried the momentum over the top of Radion. Oh, Berke Bessler has a moment, but keeps it facing the right direction. And actually, I think keeps the momentum as well. He might still be able to challenge Roy Meerhouse as they get to Le Combe.
That was a mighty moment, wasn't it, for the bright blue BMW that comes up to the outside line. Here is Gachet on the attack in the Mercedes, and Rui Meerhouse is able to hang on to his place as well as they get to Le Combe. He, in turn, although he's got Bessler behind him, there's Mike David Ortmann in number 24 there, the Pro Speed Aston, which is another one to keep an eye on. That should be making progress. Number 2 in 13th place, Michael Schreier got himself onto the back of Alex Fontana in 718, the Cayman. What else? So that's another battle worth watching as the cars now plunge into Bruxelles once more.
Plenty of cars all over the place trying to defend positions where they haven't quite got themselves up to temperature. There is the best of the AGS cars, the 89 machine actually running. Yeah. The 7 and the 80, 41st and 42nd, so really no progress made by those guys. A real shame for AGS. There is the Camaro, Dante Reponge in 19th position, with Gus Bowers just ahead. Oh no, hang on. Gus Bowers is now behind, or is that another Aston Martin?
Let's keep an eye to it. We've got a replay here of more dramas coming up to Les Combes. This might partly explain that story about Raponge, because he was being attacked from all sides and got run out over the runoff on the middle of Les Combes, didn't he?
Yeah, so Bowers is ahead of them, and that was Ralph Kellners who was giving him an attack.
Can't keep a good man down, can you? The opening lap incident up at Les Combes, no investigation necessary, so the race control team. And Hendrick still on the restart. He's getting away now, isn't he, from Leclerc?
Well, that makes sense, because we did see that Leclerc wasn't so strong in those first couple of laps, and it was felt that perhaps Hendrick still was being held up. That's why he was so attacking with his move around the outside, the Alfa McLaren to take another position. They are not able to take points away from our usual GT4 Europe runners, so wherever the Scandinavian runners are, they are really only battering the other Scandinavian runners.
They're very much a race within a race, aren't they? There's one separate points table for Scandinavian runners compared to the European regulars, as they're diving to the inside line. Alex Fontana tries to make a move against another of the Alpines. Pierre Sonsinena just ahead of him there. There's the Porsche. Alex Fontana, GT3 racer last year. Shame we don't have him in Fanatec GT, but he's been an asset to Ivan Jacoma's team. And they're really under attack now. Luc Ibanez has got Daniel Roos, the leading Scandinavian runner. Now, Roos here has to make a decision. It's all very well trying to overtake, but you need to keep your Scandinavian race lead.
But as you said before, when we do multi-class racing, they're racing drivers.
Yeah,
they just want to race. You're right. He could just sit there and chill out, because the next to the Scandinavians is 5 places down the road. But he really does want to show that he can be part of this battle. And actually, that McLaren is the best placed McLaren. We only have one other in GT Europe this year, which is the Greystone GT machine, which is with Adam Carroll 30th position right now. So we haven't got that many McLarens, and it's amazing to see that this one doing so well.
Very true, as Fontana then, having got himself up and past now Pierre Sonsinena, is 11th. His next target is Daniel Roos. This could be quite interesting, couldn't it? Because Roos has been looking feisty, and now Fontana is hustling on in pursuit of him as the cars come downhill. This is lap number 8, and we're only about a couple of minutes away from that pit stop window opening as they plunge through Pont once more here. So with the race leader having an advantage of 0.6 of a second at the start of the lap, Hendrick still clear in the Porsche Cayman, run by the WNS Motorsport team. Max Kronberg to take it over. And as we get to approaching 8:30 local time, the light's just starting to fade ever so slightly. It'll be interesting to see what it's like at the end of the hour.
One of the good things about the Spa circuit, though, is it doesn't. There's not many places where it shines directly in your face when it's setting. And when it's arriving in the morning, it's a bit more of a pain. But around the circuit, they shouldn't have it blinding themselves too much.
3 into 1 does not go, and a big shovel there. That was Adam Carroll on the inside, and the one that got hung out to dry on the outside was Jagish Gedich in the blue BMW, wasn't it? He got rather elbowed to one side there.
By Benjamin Ricci, he was elbowed by Adam Carroll.
Yes.
Ricci was doing being the squeezed.
You're right, so Benjamin Ricci was in the middle. That is Ibanez getting up on the inside of Laboda, and he goes through, so that is Luc Ibanez now up into 8th place. So the Misano winning car coming good here. The leader goes through 0.6. He's actually down to 0.4 now. Hendrick still ahead of Antoine Leclerc, and then in 3rd place Simon Gachet.
Yeah, significant for the championship, because they are in a decent point scoring position up there, 4th in class, whereas Gus Bowers must be nearly 10th in class down there in 18th position, so that's quite a big chunk of points that are missing from the Aston, and it really is between those two for the championship. We are now in the second half of the championship, and there is a big gap to 3rd spot, so for that particular championship, it's really those two that we need to be focusing on.
Altman aside, the Astons aren't really sparkling here. That was Ibanez running out wide, but you know, the BOP seems to be almost affecting the pace of the Astons. They were really good. Now that's not meant to be happening. We've got more drama up at La Source. Number 7 tries to rejoin, and as it does so, Noah Andy gets going again, but there's an Alpine that's rather broken.
Oh no.
It's going to be another interruption, because that car has got broken suspension by the look of it. Let's have another look. I think the Alpine is going to get a... Oh no, Noah Andy swipes across the front, turns himself around, and in the process damages 63, which is the Pierre-Laurent Figuier car. Right, pit window is open, and we're going to go full course yellow. Race director's nightmare. Pit window is opened on the time, just as we have to go full course yellow. And that said, the car's off the road now.
Oh.
Now what do we do?
5, 4, 3,
Now that
2, 1. Full course yellow now. Full course yellow.
We've seen this happen a couple of times where race control reacts almost a little bit too fast to the incident.
But the car's off the road, so if it's out of harm's way, if they can just pull that back quickly, they could release this full course yellow and get going again.
Yeah, because the temperatures haven't dropped and things like that,
You know, if it's 10, 20
Green
seconds.
flag on short notice.
There you go. Green flag on short notice. So be prepared to go racing very, very quickly is what that means, because we want to get you back up to race pace.
It's funny how a lot of these drivers know, you know, he's got a damaged car, he could have left it there.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag.
Right, green flag, we're back racing. There you go. That is how you can do purely a full course yellow, because it didn't take long. There wasn't much temperature drop, so they go steaming away. All of that happened within the same lap.
And now you've got to hope that the teams have been very good at communicating that to the drivers, because if the message didn't get through, then some have got a jump on others. And I fear as though Roy Meerhouse has really been caught out by that. Bessler, Ortmann, Gilbert all over the back of him. And coming into the bus stop chicane, the chicane now it's called, I think we've seen many a change of position further back, Toyota losing a spot.
But Henrik still made an absolute peach of a restart, didn't he? He's away and gone. So as they come up towards the timing line, it is Henrik Still over the line, clear by now 1.3 seconds. That's played into his hands. Suddenly the gap's doubled because he made a good restart on that green flag. Waiting to see, there are 1 or 2 coming in early to get the mandatory stops out of the way. There's the queue coming down the pit road. It's mainly those from midfield onwards. Michael Schrei, for example, coming in to give way to Gabriele Piana, and Benjamin Lariche in also to hand over to Robert Consani.
So Simon Gachet lost 2 positions at the end of that safety car period.
Yes.
And Leboda lost 3 positions as well. That's an interesting improvised line from Antoine Potty over the hill. And this McLaren just looking better and better, isn't it? The Alphard McLaren. That's 1 position and could get 2 by the time he gets to Le Combe.
But that Supra's got a lot of grunt in a straight line. And as they get towards Le Combe, Antoine Potty on the inside hangs onto the place then. Up into 9th spot then, ahead of Daniel Roos. We've got just over half the race still to go as the field wriggles out of Le Combe now. Down towards Bruxelles they go. So people not running too wide there, he says, tempting fate. Back on the inside line is Luc Ibanez, who's fallen back behind the Daniel Roos McLaren. So Ibanez is another one that lost out on that restart. Downhill they go once more. Lap 10. And with the order being shuffled now, we had Michael Schrei in, we had Benjamin Lariche, we had Gus Bowers, Julien Brichet, and Greg Faisal all in. Max Trasoldi, another one. Tom Verdier, another at the end of that previous lap to get the mandatory stops done and dusted. Look at Beke Bessler here. He's getting all toey against Meerhouse, isn't he?
I think this is a very good lap time, time to pit, because the cars are not up to full racing speed. Even if they haven't lost that much temperature, there is still a little bit of squabbling going on. So a lot of these cars that are circulating aren't quite where they should be maxed out. You come into the pits now, as with the leading car is our German GT champions from last year, Michael Schrei. He's handing over to his pro driver. Get the pro driver in for the maximum amount of time as well. Gabriel Piano will be aboard that car. As well as the cars out on track not really circulating at the best of their ability, you could find yourself with a really interesting advantage here. So look out for the likes of the BMW number 2 and the Audi number 3, Benjamin Lariche, from 19th position on the last lap. But I think that could be a wise choice to pit now.
I think you might be right. Yes, out of second place, look, Leclerc bails to give way to Villiger, and that means up to second goes Meerhouse. But actually, very few others out of that leading line also head for the pit lane. So, yeah, still they stream through.
Yeah, because also, remember, these are the less experienced drivers starting this race. So, OK, there's plenty of silvers, and therefore you don't really have a less and a more experience. But for the Pro-Ams, there is very much a gap. Side by side here, 42 versus, I think, 66, Antoine Potty.
Yeah, Antoine Potty, who shares with Romain Monti, goes through. That was all a bit touch and go, wasn't it? But it works. He goes ahead of Greg Gilbert. So again, the Supras are quick cars. They're a bit low on luck collectively, whether it's in this series or British GT, you name it, but they've got a good pace. Now, the race leader look in traffic, because those back markers coming out of the pit lane, and this is going to really jumble up the order now.
Yeah, so there's another consequence of not pitting straight away. You find yourself with the cars that have pitted getting up to speed. Now, of course, for those that have put their pro drivers in, it shouldn't take too long, but it will still take a little bit of time, and it's going to get very, very messy for our leading drivers right now. No blue flags to jump out of the way like we see in Formula 1 here.
Hendrik Still, the race leader, he is the pro in a Pro-Am car, and so now it's... Where is he? The Porsche there going through shot leading up into second place now. It is the BMW, look, Rebecca Besler. Down to third is Rui Meerhaas. In fourth place is Simon Gachet. And fifth is Mike David Ortman. So they're second, third, fourth, fifth, all in a queue. Hendrik Still has got away, and Adam Carroll is receiving a warning for driving standards. Yeah,
so my argument about putting your less experienced driver in, if you're a Pro-Am entry, you've got your pros in at the moment. It's the Am that will start tomorrow's race.
That's right, yeah. As they go through the setting sun there, and the leader has got a problem. That is Hendrik Still, who has got a puncture possibly. The car has slowed right down and stops by the side of the road, and like it's cut out all of a sudden, and he's trying to restart it. And he sort of gets going.
It's almost an electrical reset,
yeah,
wasn't
exactly.
it?
But it's not happy.
Oh.
And I think that's the end for Hendrik Still. And now the question is, where's he going to park? There's some power because the lights are on.
You see the frustration.
Absolutely.
Moving his head around. Such an aggressive first stint. He's moving again.
So yellow flag in sector 2. Into the pit lane comes Besler. Into the pit lane comes Meerhaas. Into the pit lane comes Ortman. Into the pit lane comes Potty. So we didn't see that one coming, and it's all shuffled around now in what's been a really lively race in the GT4 European Series.
Simon Gachet staying out, so inherits the lead of the race. Most of the other cars behind coming into the pits this time. It hasn't got long before the window shuts, to be honest. It could be quite tight for Gachet and Gilbert to get their pit stops done, especially if you go into something like full course yellow.
True, true. So down the pit lane, everybody peels. Or pretty much everybody now. Adam Carroll in to give way to Tim Whale. That's Luc Ibaniev giving way in number 15 Mercedes to Enzo Juliet. And that's Hendrik Still. And I just wonder whether that car is going to have to be moved under a race interruption from there. The fact that the door is opening suggests that he's about to bail, doesn't it? As the rest of the field all turns up through Les Combes. Number 42 there, Greg Gilbert. That's yet to come in, hasn't it, that car? And Simon Gachet has inherited the lead, and he also has yet to stop.
Gilbert in virtual second position, but with so much traffic around him. There's no way he's at his maximum best speed. Yeah, best laps in the 31s. The last lap for Gachet, 35. Gilbert did a 37, so 5 seconds off their ultimate pace, probably due to traffic.
Dante Raponge you just saw coming in, and I just wonder whether, once the pit window was closed, whether we might not go to an interruption to get that Porsche out of the way. But you need to get the window done in a sort of natural way, don't you, first, before things become even more complicated.
It's not in a massively dangerous place. Also, if there was an accident, you are very much in between two corners there. So covering it under yellow flags means that the cars shouldn't be making errors at that point of the circuit.
I mean, that's part of the argument, isn't it? You know, that if drivers, as a very disappointed Hendrik Still knows that race has got away from him, drivers ought to obey the flags. But if they don't and somebody hits the car, then the race director is asked, why didn't you interrupt it? Rather than why, you know, did you when nobody ended up going anywhere near it? So what do you do for the best? Either way, pit window is coming to an end and the pit lane is emptying.
Villiger going through shot there ahead of Romain Montier and this group of cars that we think are kind of the leading group. So I reckon the Alpine, there he is, will inherit the lead again. Obviously Antoine Leclerc was in second position behind Hendrik Still. We don't have Still any longer, so theory would suggest that Villiger, if it is to form, would inherit the lead. But the Toyota up to second position, therefore, is very impressive, depending on where those other cars that haven't pitted yet fall into line.
But Romain Montier is much more experienced a driver, isn't he, than Loic Villiger, so that puts the emphasis on his pace now to watch. As into the pit lane has come Simon Gachet to give way to Eric Debar. Greg Gilbert is in, Alex Fontana is in, and Jim Pla in as well for Jean-Luc Bobelic to take over. And the majority of the field now, yes, everybody that's still circulating has pitted. And with the pit window now closed, that's fine. As long as you're in before the window closes, then that's okay. So Villiger leads, but he's being chased hard. There you can see by the Toyota in the hands of Romain Monti, which has got in turn ahead of Will Burns in the BMW. And then it is Erwin Bastar, isn't it, who's taken over from Rui Miojas in the yellow Audi. That's the Porsche. The still Porsche, still as in stationary as well as still as in the first driver, and it's still there as well, so it's not yet been moved.
Wow.
Good night.
Pit lane time is something we also have to look at GT4 series, because we have seen in the past a few infringements on the amount of time it takes to go through pits. Looking down the order, I would say the number 9 Aston Martin with a pit time of 2 minutes seems to be quite a bit faster than everybody else. Yeah, it's 121 seconds, but you are allowed a joker of a second in either race. Okay. So if you're a second under, you can, but you can't do it tomorrow. You can only do it in one of the 2 races, but you are given a 1 second joker tolerance, if you like. And Romain Monti bang on 2 minutes, so a point of a second faster, and he would have definitely got a penalty. But that Toyota will have to play the joker. Yeah. And as I say, the number 9 Aston Martin will also have to do the same thing. Right, so it is Villiger ahead of Monti by 1.9 seconds, and now the spotlight turns onto the Toyota, but it's going to be third, isn't it? Because here comes Eric Debar out of the pit lane, so the Mercedes was ahead as it came up the hill. There it is, but only now is Debar up to proper pace, and here comes a little Alpine behind. So this is Loic Villiger's chance to try to go for the race lead. It is Eric Debar on the pit stops who's got the lead, but on the track, back ahead goes Loic Villiger. So Monti, actually, after all of that, is still only third. And I feel as though that is a gain of position ultimately through the pit stop window. So despite having to deal with all the traffic for Simon Gachet, they have still found themselves in a better position than where they were at the start of the pit lane opening. Now, Giacoma's being shown as third position, but that's not correct because he's nowhere to be seen. Yeah, I think that was partly based on the fact that the car was third when it came into the pits on that previous lap. Yes. So this is the order, as we've seen. Villiger ahead of Debar, who is under attack from Romain Monti. Will Burns is fourth. The Supra tries to go for a gap on the inside, but to no avail. Interesting that Erwin Bastar in that yellow Audi is dropping away just by a couple of lengths against Will Burns, isn't he? We know that Erwin Bastar is quick. He drove a Supra in the French Championship last year. And then who's behind him? It is Enzo Juliet in number 15 Mercedes, the NM Racing Team car. Will Burns there to the outside at Piff Paff, but Eric Debar in the Mercedes, bit of cork in bottle sort of role here, because he's holding up Romain Monti, who has to dive to the inside. He gets forced up the curb. He's coming through, so is Burns, so is Bastar. It was a bit brutal, that, but it was the only chance for Monti, because certainly Debar was holding everybody up. Absolutely opened the can, didn't he? There wasn't really the space, and the space ended up shutting the door as well, but he had to get his elbows out to push him out of the way, and he managed it, but still with compromised speed. It's side by side, BMW versus Audi, side by side through Blanchimont, and there is no room to run off on the outside if you make a mistake. Well, there's a little bit, but certainly not as much as they used to be. They both get through the corner safely. Yeah. The one that went wide was Eric Debar, who wasn't really part of that battle, and he's about to lose another place. Enzo Juliet goes to the inside, way up the curb, and it's really like a ramp. That it's more angled than it looks on camera, so you sort of clamber up it like a proper slope. Skateboarders would love it. And now Will Burns under attack because Erwin Bastar has caught back up again in the Audi. 21 minutes still to go out of La Source. Been fun this, and here comes Bastar then. The Audi gets a good run out of La Source. Goes toe-to-toe with Will Burns all the way down the hill, and now Bastar's going to have the inside line for the key part of a Rouge if he is brave enough, but Will Burns stands his ground on the outside line. Look at this, fantastic racing, and Will Burns just comes out ahead. Unbelievable bravery from Will Burns to sit around the outside of the middle part of a Rouge there, and he's still got the momentum up the hill as well. He unfortunately doesn't have the racing line into the first part of Lecombe, but if he sticks around the outside, he can have the inside for the next bit. Let's see what he does, because the shorter line is claimed by Bastar. He's up the curb, and here comes Will Burns. Look, goes for the gap coming out of the corner. Little bit of a rub between them. The danger to both is Enzo Juliet, who has certainly arrived at the party in the Mercedes there behind. So Juliet is on the attack. Burns is on the attack as well. And Eric Debar is also under attack because he's got Fabien Machal, Gabriele Piana,
Andy Van Jacoma all queued up behind him as, again, his pace is holding up others.
Let's remind you that it's Enzo Juli in the 15 machine that is 10 points behind in the championship. Konstantin Lachnauer now aboard the number 10 Aston Martin. Lachnauer is now only 4 positions back in class from the 15 machine. It will certainly close up the championship, but in terms of that is what we're looking at. Those 2 cars, even if we've still got a couple of races left, because they will go to Hockenheim at the start of September and then Barcelona at the start of October to complete their championship season.
So they flick through the piff-paff. There's the car that led early on, Hendrik Still's Porsche, stranded by the side of the racetrack with that mechanical failure as the cars now storm their way up through the Cours Paul Frère. So the race order is Villiger 3 seconds clear of Romain Monti. There he is, that's the leading car, that's the Alpine. But last time did lap quicker than Romain Monti, but he had to get himself up through traffic. Now it's a clear lap. In the sectors, Monti is quicker in both. So the gap is coming down up to the end of the lap here.
Car run by Code Racing Developments. Plenty of Alpine experience in French GT, which is GT4 based, and also in the Europa Cup of Alpine. And, well, we heard from Villiers on the grid, not a huge amount of experience, and no experience here at Spa, other than he said, I know the track, just haven't driven it. So he's watched it on television and maybe played it on a computer game, but certainly doing the business here and looking actually quite comfortable and quite strong, ahead of a far more experienced Romain Monti. Last time, though, Monti was a second, 1.2 seconds faster than the little Alpine. So we've got 18 minutes remaining, could well close that gap by the end of the race.
They flick their way through Eau Rouge. Now, look at the progress of Gabriele Piana, up into 6th place, having taken over now from Michael Schreit. That's Eric Debar, who's fallen back behind Fabien Machal. So that's now changed for 9th place. But Piana, 10 seconds off the race lead, and with good pace at the moment. So that BMW might be able to gain more ground before the very end. So we know that Piana is quick. And as he was saying, not only has he won in this championship in the past, but he and Schreit victorious within the German championship. In GT4 Scandinavia, Eric Behrens has taken over now from Daniel Roos, and that McLaren going like clockwork. More gravel flicks about there. Somebody's run wide.
There's a bit of dust, wasn't there, as well, but I'm not sure whether it was just somebody a little bit wide off the road, because there's just gravel everywhere.
Yeah, true. And it would have been Debar, the next one up the road. Andrei Solokovtev in the WNS Motorsport Porsche leading his class as he goes through. Being taken over from Michael Laboda. So 17 minutes on the clock. Sun starting to set, temperatures finally dropping. Best lap of the race, Bekke Besler, very early on in the number 12 BMW, the car that Will Burns now drives as they once more turn their way down through Pouhon.
Today here at Spa, as per usual, with championships. Next year's calendar released, very similar to this year's calendar, just Monza in Italy, Monza and Imola swapping, as we've seen previously. So Monza will be the start of the season rather than Imola that we had this year. And there will be a 6 hours of Vallelunga the weekend of my birthday in October. So there's a present for me.
6 hours for GT3 or GT4?
GT4.
Excellent.
A GT4 only 6 hour race. Non-championship, but that could be quite kind of a GT4 world final feel to it.
Which has been mooted in the past, hasn't it? And then circumstances have changed, like, you know, a pandemic appears on the scene that derailed plans. But yeah, the GT4 drivers, I think they've always craved a long race, haven't they? Because they've always had this traditional sprint race format where you get half a race each at best. So, out of the hairpin. Through La Source, the lead gap is down to 1.2 seconds. Romain Monti is on for a win here. This car, which ironically is going to start at the back of tomorrow's grid for not qualifying in the second session, has made very good progress up through the order, bearing in mind its travails in the qualifying session. It lost its best lap time for causing a red flag, which put it even further down the order, and they've had to repair it. And yet, out of all of that, with quarter of an hour to go, it's 1.2 seconds off the race lead. That's all.
Red flag was in the first or the second session? The first session, wasn't it? So it was the grid that set this, this race,
It was the red flag in this, which did the damage, lost its best lap, fell further back on the grid to the 12th row, and then never got out in Q2.
So a real uphill weekend for them, which might result in them, certainly at the moment, standing on the podium. But you get the feeling that with 15 minutes still remaining, there is the possibility of a change here.
Indeed so. Well, it's on, isn't it? I mean, it's a quicker car, and you can see how much closer Romain Monti has got. Dropped downhill once again here, down to Pouon. And then Owen Bastard up into third at the expense of Will Burns, who has dropped away. So that's sorted itself out for now. Juliet is fifth, Piana is sixth. And not actually now making progress. Piana's lap times have plateaued a little bit.
This is the thing you can't teach. We heard Antoine Leclerc is Villiers' coach, driver coach, and you're able to look at data and say where you need to put the car and all the rest of it. You cannot teach how to deal with traffic and how to cope with the pressure of a car getting closer and closer. He'll see on his dashboard that the gap to the car behind is reducing, and how that affects him as a driver is key to being a successful racing driver. Yes, there's one thing, being able to pump in the lap times on a test day on your own and be able to do that. Racing another driver and being able to deal with the pressure of racing is something so different. And actually, for the moment, really doesn't seem to be putting too many wheels wrong.
No, he's doing a good job, isn't he? I mean, OK, he's being caught, but look at the gap he's got over the third-placed Audi. Now, whether, if he does lose the lead, he becomes a bit demoralised and the pace then goes away, we'll have to find out. But I still would put money on Romain Monti winning this. He's got time left in which to do it. But that said, round here, 13 laps with a lap being over, 13 minutes with a lap being over 2.5 minutes. There aren't many laps available in which to do this.
Further back, Porsche Cayman versus Audi. Ivan Giacomo is aboard that 718 machine, which is in 7th position.
Now 8th, because Robert Constantin's got ahead in that multicoloured Audi. So the Burger King-backed R8 has gone ahead of the Porsche. And Constantin's next target is 3 seconds up the road, and it's Gabriele Piana, but he's not lapping as quickly.
It's quite a slow lap from Giacomo, a 36.7. I'm sure he could do better pace than that, so maybe a mistake from the Porsche. Oh, well, that's an interesting line.
Yep. Constantin's sat-nav was on the blink there, so he explores all the run-off tarmac going up the hill. And now that gives the advantage back to Ivan Giacomo, who has the momentum going up to Les Combes now as he thinks about trying to make a move into the braking area, but Constantin fends him off on the inside line.
Yeah, probably did the right thing there. Blended out the throttle to show that he wasn't gaining an advantage. Although, is that message on the screen for somebody else? That's car 9, who has to give a position back for presumably gaining advantage off track.
And that's Christian Gysi, who is in 21st place. So we've not seen it, but the race control team will have done on the bank of monitors there at their disposal. 12 more minutes on the clock. Mercedes there going toe-to-toe. The NM Racing Team car looks as though it is about to drop a place as they dive up to Les Combes. That is number 9. That's Christian Gysi then, who is being told he's got to give a position back.
Well, he's just given a position back to a BMW of Jason DeHinchey.
Right.
But on the timing screens, they're quite separated, so I'm not quite sure how many positions he's actually ended up giving back there.
It doesn't say which car he had to give it back to. No. Anyway, with 11.5 on the clock still, Villiers is only 8/10 up on Romain Monti now, so the gap down again by half a second last time around. And here is the move that Robert Constantin made on Ivan Giacomo coming down to the chicane. And Giacomo got run out a little bit wide, so not only did he lose the place, but as he tried to find the apex of a corner there, so he also lost a bit of the time that you were describing that he had lost. And in this little battle pack, you've got Tim Whale going great guns in the McLaren now, 19th. Kenny Herriman's behind him, and then Christian Gysi. So this is now 19th, 20th, and 21st. And the speed of car number 88 is now under investigation for blocking in the pit lane. So the race officials have all sorts of things thrown at them as the leaders go by with only half a second between them now. 88 is the Savronov and Weintraub NM Racing Team Mercedes that's being looked at. That's going too slowly. Car 11 is being looked at for going too quickly, the Jason DeHinchey BMW. It's all happening.
Yeah, DeHinchey's now showing as 3 places behind Gysi, with Enric Sassa and Knoll between the two of them. So I don't know what I've got confused there, because I'm sure I saw Gysi giving a position back to a BMW, but maybe I got myself mixed up.
I don't think they've completed that lap yet. I think they're about to come through, and that will confirm the new order. You're looking at the leaders who are nose to tail coming up towards Les Combes, and Villiers to Monti was half a second at the start of the lap. As the rest come by, you have got to Hinchi ahead of Gysi. So now they've completed that lap. The screen's updated itself. There are the top two. 10 minutes to go, and we know that Romain Monti's lights work, despite the damage sustained this morning, because he's very vigorously using them to try to terrorise Loic Villiers out of the way.
And Villiers responding to the light flashing by, jinking and defending. He didn't need to. He wasn't close enough, but that's exactly the kind of thing you can't really teach. You know, he suddenly was worried that perhaps there was an opportunity, and Villiers getting really to the inside line there, gets himself back onto the racing line before he throws the car into the first part of Pouhon, or double gauche, depending on who you are and what you like. But yeah, he's being hassled now, and he's feeling that pressure, and he's putting that into the inputs of the car, and this will just only slow them up even further. What he actually needs is Aaron Bastard in third position to get onto the back of Monti, so that Monti can start worrying about what's going on behind rather than just focusing on attack.
Yeah, Bastard is not close enough, and Villiers can't really afford to go so slowly to stack him into the traffic behind, because he's going to be in jeopardy of losing the lead to Monti anyway. So yeah, he needs Bastard to get there. The Santalok Audi just is not quite quick enough. Will Burns is still fourth. There are the leaders going through shot then. So we are going to have round about 8 minutes on the clock at the end of this lap, so 4 more laps maybe. It's still enough time, I think, for Monti to take the win, isn't it?
Yes. Let's see how hard Villiers defends, though, because also with lacking experience comes unpredictability. Puts the car in a very good position there into the chicane, right in the middle of the road. Monti just chooses the outside line, but can't find a way through. He's going to have a bit better momentum out of the chicane, because ultimately had a better racing line through that point, and Villiers hangs on to the inside. It's going to be very, very tight to try and get through La Source from there. And again, to the middle of the road, so slows himself up and slows Monti up too. Monti tries to get on the power. Big old slide from the Toyota out of La Source that time.
Downhill once more then. So good race this has turned out to be, and two drivers that you might not have anticipated would be fighting for the race lead are doing just that. The Alpine then leaning on its suspension. You see the little puff of tar smoke as it powers over the hill, over the brow. Now down to Les Combes. There's Romain Monti, that Supra with all of that grunt. And again, fascinating to see how the balance of performance works. Such different styles of car. Alpine compared to Supra, which sort of towers over the little French coupe. They break for Les Combes, but is Loic Villiers on borrowed time here? Because certainly Romain Monti is looking very threatening indeed.
Yeah, but Villiers is doing a great job, and actually was very strong through Eau Rouge, so didn't even need to defend into Les Combes, and the flashing lights continue, but this time Villiers just puts the car in the middle of the road, and that actually can be a racing line. You could turn in early, kind of square off or triangulate the corner so you get a better exit through it. So that also means that you're kind of half defending through that corner as well. Not very strong through Jackie Ick. Change of position further back. Our two Swedish cars are much more together than they were before.
That's Eric Debard, isn't it, being passed by Eric Behrens. So the Scandinavian entry is up to 12th, the European entry is down to 13th, and behind them in 229 is the next of the Scandinavian entries. It's the Toyota of Hans Holmlund, who is trying to catch up to the McLaren. Loic Villiers, I take your point, is doing a very, very good job, because Romain Monti hasn't really caught him properly yet, has he? I mean, he's still not quite on the tail, and he certainly hasn't been able to find a way past him.
Timing screens say they're incredibly close, but there hasn't been a proper attack, really.
No, they might be close over the timing line, but again, the way the cars work around the lap, the gap rises and falls a little bit. Let's have a look here at the Camaro having a dive up the inside of Tim Wales' McLaren. That's Kenny Heremans, and round the outside of all of them comes Jason Tahinchi.
Oh.
And something has to give. Do you know what? That could have been a whole lot worse.
Yeah, there's not a lot of space there, and you can't just open the wheel and run wide like you used to with the tarmac on the outside. Now you actually have to keep the car on the road.
This could be the lead change coming up, because the Alpine ever so slightly wayward into the chicane. A smoother line through it by Romain Monti in the Toyota, and so now he's right there in the wheel tracks. But Villiers has been taught well, hasn't he? He goes defensive on the inside line. Monti wants the wide in, tight out line. If he can swing up the inside coming out of the corner, then he's got the line all the way down the hill. But again, Villiers is just able to move the car across in front of him. So Romain Monti knows he's in a motor race here. He is having to work very, very hard for the race lead. Plunge downhill once more. This is lap 20. flick left, then right, then left again at the top of the brow, and surely this is where the grunt and go Supra is going to be able to use all of those horses.
Certainly a lot closer than he was that last time through. Villiers, great through erosion over Radion, the car staying straight, but the distance is about half what it was one lap before, defending on the inside line, but of course with the chicane you can have two different lines at the turn. Villiers hold on once more, and Monty can't find a way through.
This is a very, very good drive by Villiers. Romain Monty getting a little bit more determined now. You can see the fact that the car is taking unorthodox lines. There's a bit more urgency about this now. When we started talking about this, with the best part of 20 minutes to go, we thought Monty was a shoe-in. Now there are less than 5 minutes to go, and that shoe doesn't fit quite so well. So as they drop downhill, it is still Villiers ahead, but only by about a length.
And crucially, the pace isn't that bad either, because Bastard behind is only a couple of tenths faster on that last lap. These guys are all over the road, all on different improvised lines, but Bastard isn't taking chunks of time away from them, even though you would have thought he should be.
So they swoop once more through Pouhon. Now the run towards Pif Paf, and again, look, Villiers hugs that inside line, makes Monty work for it on the outside where it's dustier, where there's a bit less traction. So it's advantage Alpine, not by much, but it's still the advantage to the Alpine. They're going to get 2 more laps out of this as well, aren't they?
You can see how different the two cars are too. That Alpine's so low to the ground that the Toyota Supra looks massive in comparison, just because its ride height is higher, all part of the balance of performance, but that will affect how the car drives, especially on the exit corners, getting power down, the reactivity through the piff-paff, things like that. They are going to be completely different vehicles to feel, to drive, and yet they're racing for the victory in GT4 Europe, and in terms of performance, look pretty similar.
The Supra out wide then. It towers over the Alpine as Monty goes for the outside line down to the chicane. He's almost level, but he brakes late, but it's the wrong place to be. So through they will come now with time for 2 more laps in the race, which is bad news for Villiers. He might have preferred 1, really, because he's got to defend doubly hard. But again, with Monty on the lights, they come through. Now, they're lapping 234s, 235s. Behind them is Bastard, who is 235.1. He's not lapping as quickly as the leader.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite incredible. And again, Villiers didn't really need to defend into that source because he had a good exit. The Alpine does seem to be very stable on the exit of the corners, where we've seen the Supra kind of wiggle around, not be able to get the power down quite as much. And Villiers is able to put that car exactly where he needs to, and we haven't seen too many little errors either.
True enough. Owen Bastard through in 3rd place. Now the gap between Bastard and Burns is 0.8 of a second, and Burns to Juliet is 0.8 of a second, and then it's 7 seconds back to Gabriele Piana, who hasn't really become part of that battle. There are the leaders once more, up to Lecombe. If Villiers can hang on to do this, and I'll tell you what, I think he deserves to, then it's going to be one of the drives of the season. Equally, after the problems they've had all day, Romain Monty and Antoine Potty kind of deserve a win as well.
I suppose the other thing to consider is they are in 2 different classes.
Yeah.
So they are going to be scoring for their class rather than for the overall event. No doubt Romain Monty wants to stand on the top step of the podium overall, but ultimately he's still on the top step of the podium for his particular class. And Villiers is in the Pro-Am class, which Ivan Giacomo is the next best car, down in 8th position. So actually Villiers wouldn't lose too much if he lost that position, but taking the checker flag first is what it's all about.
Yeah, there's pride at stake, isn't there? And there's that overall race win. You can say, I won, rather than I won my class. Look, Villiers determined to try to come out on top. Now there, look, Enzo Juliet right on the back of Will Burns. That gap's come down by about the best part of 0.8 of a second over this lap. So the Mercedes, then with its lights drilling a hole into the back of the BMW, they're together down towards campus, where the college now sits on the inside of the road. Will Burns just slows the car a touch on the apex to stop the Mercedes being able to nip up the inside. The leaders, though, are going to start the last lap this time, and it was Villiers ahead of Monty when we last saw them. There is Burns hanging on to that 4th place. Towards Blanchimont they go. Owen Bastard a bit in no man's land up the road. He's not catching the leaders, but he's not being caught by these 2.
Looking at the characteristic of that BMW, I think Burns is either nursing a problem or just nursing the car to the end. He's not leaning on the car. The car's not sliding around like we see from the Supra or the Mercedes behind. He's being incredibly neat, and I feel as though perhaps the car is not at its best. Villiers holds on by quite a margin, over nearly half a second now.
That stretch, hasn't it, as they come through? Half a second up to 11 tenths.
Yeah.
So as they go over the stripe, Romain Monti might have just been lagging back to get a bit of cool air in the car, because the closer you sit, the more it gets hot. He might just want one last push.
Well, Villiers gone into the 33, so that's actually with a push lap from him.
It was, wasn't it? And so the best part of a full second quicker, so he was. Right, it's going to be interesting to see what Monti can do now. Last lap, he's running out of ideas, isn't he? The clock's about to hit 0. That's your Scandinavian leader, Eric Behrens and Daniel Roos in the Alfab McLaren that comes out of the chicane. Good drive by both of them, this, to just get on with the job of winning their category, winning their race, which is what they need to do. Through that car now comes, and the race leaders make the climb up towards Les Cons for the final time. This lap number 22 in this first GT4 European Series race of the weekend.
Enzo Juli, 5th position. Lack now down in 11th overall with 4 cars between them. So that will close up our championship going into tomorrow. I think Romain Monti is settled.
I think you're right. So Loic Villiers in a Pro-Am car is going to defeat the Silvers, and he has driven absolutely fantastically because he's withstood pressure. He's never raced here before. He's done precious little racing, and he has responded in style, hasn't he?
A beautiful drive with huge amounts of pressure, not a foot wrong, really. We haven't even really seen the car stepping out too much. We saw a little bit through the chicane, a couple of laps where he was a little bit keen and eager on the throttle, but with all that pressure, with all the flashing lights, with all the driving in different racing lines, he has done such a good job. Remember also, he wished Antoine Leclerc would jump up the road so that he had an easy run of things.
Yes.
Didn't happen because we had the full course yellows and the safety car periods, and he had to do all this work himself.
Now look at Will Burns. That car was all out of shape coming out of the piff path because he's under real pressure from Juliet, so that's going to go down to the wire. Erwin Bastard ahead actually is being caught a little bit by these two now. Will Burns may be having to nurse this car as you suggested, but the pace is still pretty decent and he's having to extract everything he can out of it on this last lap. The leaders though are coming up towards the chicane. The checkered flag is being made ready for this man, for Loic Villiers, who along with Antoine Leclerc is going to come through to score a really well-deserved win in the first GT4 European Series race of the weekend. It's a win for Alpine, it is a win for Antoine Leclerc and for Loic Villiers, who comes across the line to win, and a great drive ahead of Romain Monti and Antoine Potti, with Owen Bastard and Ruud Miojas taking 3rd place. And that was some drive, wasn't it, by Villiers, with all of that pressure.
Unbelievable, really. Considering the lack of experience he has both here at Spa and in comparison to Romain Monti, who is a seasoned campaigner in that machine, that was quite special. And I think maybe a little bit surprised about Monti unable to find a way through. For GT Scandinavia then, here comes Alfab McLaren, the better of the two McLarens in this race by the end. Behrens losing some ground on his rivals in the second half of the race, but ultimately the gap still a couple of seconds between himself and Holmlund in the Toyota in 2nd spot. And we await the best of our AM category cars, which was on the 2nd row of the grid.
Yeah, there it is. The 37 Porsche of Mikhail Laboda and Andrei Solokovtsev comes up towards the line. That's going to finish in 22nd place overall and wins its class from Paolo Maloney and Max Trasoldi, and then 3rd is going to be Julien Lambert with Wilfried Casarbon in another of the AGS event entries. So Antoine Leclerc and Loic Villiers take the race win by 1.6 seconds in the end. A really impressive drive.
Yeah, it doesn't really tell the full story though, does it? Because it was down to less than 2 tenths for many, many laps. We called it 18 minutes before the end that it was looking tight. So he really did respond so well to that pressure.
Yeah, just a great job, well done, wasn't it, by Villiers? And it wasn't that he was doing anything ragged, he didn't look desperate, he looked like he's been doing that kind of drive for season after season.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there are people in this world who respond well to pressure and others that panic. And he's obviously a man that maybe in his professional life is good with dealing with pressure and has brought that into his race car.
Very possibly. Well, either way, it's been a ripper drive by Loic Villiers.
What did he say? Have a blast.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
Yeah, blasted away. So the Alpine will head to Parc Fermé. Then the Podiums will kick into life eventually with Silvers, Pro-Ams and AMs to look forward to.
And Scandinavian.
Yes, probably as well.
And they have a couple of classes within their championship too, in the same structure that we see in GT4 Europe.
And drama right at the very end at La Source.
What's happened there?
And how has it happened? Yes. That's the Sellerslag Mercedes, I think, of Jean-Luc Behetz and Johan van Arum. That looks like it's been savaged from behind, but there's a bit of front damage as well. So I know they were, you know, in a scrum as they came across the line. He was with Julien Lambert and just ahead of the Weintraub Mercedes, but that car has got proper damage, hasn't it?
Did you say it's been assaulted?
Yeah. All right, let's have a look at the result then. Loïc Villiger and Antoine Leclerc taking the race win ahead of Antoine Potti and Romain Monti, with Roy Miojas and Owen Bastard in third. Fourth, Beke Besler and Will Burns ahead of Luc Ibanez and Enzo Juliet. Sixth, Michael Try and Gabriele Piana, and seventh, Benjamin Lariche and Robert Conseni. Ivan Jacoma and Alex Fontana. Eighth from Fabien Machal and Greg Gilbert, with 10th being Simon Thurman and Pierre Sonsinena. Classes then, the silvers being won by Monti and Potti. The winners within Pro-Am, of course, the overall winners, Loïc Villiger and Antoine Leclerc, and the AMs going the way, as you just saw, of the Cayman of Mikhail Laboda and Andrei Solokotsev. And out of 54 of them that could have started, in fact there were more prior to the race because we lost a few in qualifying this morning, 46, give or take, got to the end of the race in various states of repair.
Oh yeah, and both the AGS Aston Martins ending up in the pit lane again. So the issues that they had in qualifying, they still haven't seemed to have fixed by the looks of things. Interesting that they do have 3 cars and the third one seems fine, although it's being accused of blocking in the pit lane. I don't know how that works. We saw the 88 under investigation for the same thing.
Yeah, I think it means you go so slowly that you get in the way of people, but discuss.
Yeah, it seems an odd thing to do, unless you are trying to kind of create space for yourself to get into the pits. Here are the celebrations down at Code Racing Developments, though.
A delighted team, and perhaps a surprise team, because that was the result that, in a sense, came out of nowhere.
Is that a Montoya-style helmet by the looks of things?
Might be right, actually, yes.
Well, Pablo's here this weekend, his son racing in Formula 4.
It's true, yes. So the drivers will get to the podium in a moment. Loïc Villiger, I think, can't quite believe this. It's taking a moment or two to sink in, isn't it? Out he gets. And a very, very happy team. But he drove brilliantly to win that. Did a really, really good job, didn't he?
He's fired up too, isn't he? That cool head that we thought he might have for dealing with pressure has just been released.
Is he happy or is he a happy man? So Antoine Leclerc, who's been a bit short of luck in the past in this championship, also I think deserves that win, deserves a good result finally. So as the drivers make their way to the podium, we'll have a look at the highlights of that race that was full of drama right from the start, with the best getaway being made by Antoine Leclerc then, but it very nearly came to naught for some at the first corner. Christophe Amon getting it wrong in the mid-pack, rotating as it was one of the Toyotas, in fact, it might have been the Antoine Potti car that came across the front of him, and that knocked him into a spin, and as he tried to rejoin, suddenly Amon realised who was around him. Then we had this big slide from Jean-Baptiste Meller that drilled Kenton Cook, the Alpine, off the road with lots of frontal damage, and that was another retirement before the end of the lap. Kenton Cook's day was pretty much done as well, as with a puncture and damage he limped to the pits. Hendrik Still made this really impressive dive up on the inside of Leclerc to take over the lead, and then there was contact between Hendrik Still and Etienne Shelley, which meant that the Supra ended up in the gravel down at turn 9, and in turn that brought out a full course yellow, and that brought out a safety car. When the race got back underway, the battles continued, cars making their way down into the chicane, 1 or 2 running out of room, and it wasn't going to be long before we had another drama which brought out a full course yellow period, and there was also this clash between Noah Andy and the Alpine down at the first corner. And then the race leader suddenly slowed coming out of the pit pack. Hendrik Stills' Porsche off by the side of the road, and he was distraught. A race win snatched away from him. Eric de Baar, cork in bottle, and eventually elbowing his way up on the inside to go through was Romain Monti. Others followed suit. Well, we had this great battle between Owen Bastard and Will Burns, but even though Loic Village was being caught remorselessly by Romain Monti, the Toyota never quite made a proper lunge for leadership, and it meant that Village hung on for a first win. So a great drive then by Loic Village, and the celebrations I think will continue long into the night, although they do have another race to go tomorrow, of course, and it's an early start.
I was just thinking that for those of cars that have got issues, for those cars that need to be fixed, I'm thinking Jean-Baptiste Mella and the front end of that machine. It is going to be a very short night for the mechanics in terms of their sleeping. It will be a very long night in terms of their working. I mean, for all the teams, because all the teams will have to turn around the cars anyway, but just those extra couple of hours when we're talking at a 9:15 start tomorrow morning. I'm questioning myself, but I know it's early.
I thought it was 9:55.
9:55.
Slightly better.
Yes.
You can have an extra Weetabix. Yeah, 9:55 is the broadcast slot for a 10 o'clock race start, pretty much. Right, the drivers then are being brought to the traditional podium. So, in other words, the podium in the endurance pits.
I suppose we could call it the Spa 24 Hours podium these days, couldn't we? Because not so many other championships use it any longer.
No, that's true. Although, quirkily, this weekend, it's not the Spa 24 Hours podium, because that's going to be done on the concert stage in the fan village.
Oh, how very Formula E.
How very innovative, I thought.
Yes, that's a great word.
Because it takes it to the fans, doesn't it? So this is Loic Village in replay with Romain Monti. You can see how that gap came down and down and down as the gap between them was reduced lap after lap after lap. But try as he might, there's nothing that Monti could really do. Even though he got this close coming down into the La Source hairpin, still wasn't enough to let him go through.
There was never really a definitive, proper attempt, was there? There was lots and lots of sniffing, but there was never really a jam it down the inside and make it happen like we saw from Antoine Potty in the first stint, where he kind of created space for himself. Definitely the faster car, there's no doubt about that, but when it came to the overtaking, he kind of needed to be a bit more inventive, I think.
And then in the end, the pace just went away, didn't it? So maybe he'd overworked the tyres here by being stuck behind the Alpine.
Or he just settled for the fact that he had maximum points in his class and he didn't need that '1 spot.
So the drivers then making their way up to the podium. And tomorrow, as I say, we've got their second race. Another hugely busy day of support racing before we even get to the 24 hours with Formula 4, Formula Regional and GT4 and Lamborghini and the SRO 30th anniversary GT race. Although that field might be reduced a little bit after today's race and one or two with mechanical woes. So those teams are working long into the night as well.
Well, either that or they're at the gala.
Yeah, quite. Yes, yeah.
Because I'm sure they'll all be invited to that if you bring your GT1 Maserati to town. And actually, they don't notice they don't actually have big crews either. You know, there's one or two people helping them out.
Right, I think drivers are just about ready. So we'll see which is the first podium that's going to be brought forward.
Congratulations to Central Racing, Gregory Gilbert, Fabien Michal.
So it is Pro-Am that we're going to start with. Greg Gilbert and Fabien Michal step forward onto the podium for third in Pro-Am. Then for second of the Pro-Am drivers, Alex Fontana and Ivan Jacoma. And the Pro-Am winners, and I think this is why we're doing this, it's so we can get the overall winners up first, because it is a Pro-Am winning car outright. It is going to be Antoine Leclerc and Loic Village.
And in honor of
fabulous drive by both, and the French drivers in a French car from a French team on the top step of the podium in Belgium.
many a podium to cycle through, but some very attractive trophies being presented to our Pro-Am competitors. Greg Gilbert, the first driver in that car. Fabien Michel ending up down in 9th position overall.
So then the winning team gets the trophy for the Alpine squad. Code Racing Development, Antoine Leclerc, Loic Villiger. After an excellent job, I don't think Loic can quite yet take it all in.
Still catching his breath, isn't he?
They're the spa-shaped trophies.
Well done, gentlemen. Show your
Yes, I wonder where Loic Villiger's from. His accent was quite
not Swiss.
funky. Well, yes, but
oh, I see what you mean. Where?
There's a lot of different Swiss.
Right.
There's Swiss Italian, Swiss French, Swiss German, and I couldn't place his accent at all. But they're not going to spray the champagne this evening because they need those overalls for tomorrow. So they're going to smell of sweat rather than of sticky stuff.
And so that's your first podium done. That's Pro-Am. Then we await the next one, which might be the silvers, which should bring forward the second-placed overall crew. So Marnie Neutard, who is the championship manager, peeks around the side of the podium, make sure that everything is being made ready. Champagne is prepared, and the trophies are there behind the podium.
I think it was actually, in total, a bit of quite a well-behaved race.
Yeah.
From what we've seen of GT4, it can be pretty chaotic. And there was a couple of elbows out, and there was the inevitable first-lap incident. But actually, when it came to the real racing, there was at times very hard, but very fair.
Agree with that. Yeah, it was a decent race, for sure. Very, very good indeed, as then the silvers step forward. So Will Burns and Becky Bessler are there. Then we have for Santilot, Rui Meerschaus and Erwin Bastard. And then the top step of the silver podium is going to be for Antoine Potti and Romain Monti, which is a real turnaround given how their day started in the gravel with a damaged car and oh so close to an outright win as well.
And even bigger work to do tomorrow when they start right at the tail end of the field. But don't discount them, especially if it works out. Why on earth is he wearing a Circuit Paul Ricard hat?
So well done to Antoine Potti and to Romain Monti then, as the winning silvers, the trophies about to be presented then to the winning drivers. Third place drivers, Will Burns and Becky Bessler.
Bessler's stint was very, very strong as well. That's considering where they started to find themselves up in the top 5 positions. And I'm sure Burns was nursing an issue at the end of the race, but Becky Bessler doing a really good first stint in that car. Looking forward to seeing what he can do in the second half of tomorrow's race.
And so there, the trophies to the winning team. And now for CMR's drivers, the Spa-shaped and coloured with the Belgian flag trophies to Antoine Potti and to Romain Monti. And considering they didn't win outright, they don't look remotely fast, do they? They just look very content with a class win. And maybe it was the team on the radio saying, all right, let's just get the points out of this.
Yeah, they had a decent effort, didn't they? They had a decent go at it. And once it was clear after a couple of laps it wasn't possible, then I think just bringing it home was the most sensible option. But at least we saw a race of it.
The soundtrack is a Maserati MC12, by the way, going past the podium. There's a long-tail McLaren, part of the 30 years of SRO. Some of the road-going equivalents of the GT1 cars from the period have been given some demo laps at the end of the day.
Just in case there wasn't anything else to happen on track.
Quite. That's the McLaren going down the hill, you can hear. And so there's one more podium out of GT4 European Series still to go. And that's going to be for the AMs, where in third spot is Julien Lambert and Wilfried Casarbon. Second, it's going to be the Italian BMW drivers Max Tresoldi and Paolo Meloni. And then the winning drivers from the class, Mikhail Loboda and Andrei Solokotsev. So the drivers being brought forward. Wilfried Casarbon and Julien Lombard to the podium. So the AGS events drivers take third. Second will be, as I say, to Paolo Maloney and Max Tresoldi. And then the class winners of Mikhail Loboda and Andrei Solokotsev step forward for the top step of the podium, their first victory of the season. Although the car fell away from its grid position, still hung on to win the class, and they are delighted with a class win.
Yeah, very much set up by that amazing qualifying performance on the second row of the grid. What national anthem we'll be hearing?
So for the German WNS Motorsport team, national anthem played, and the trophies about to be presented then.
We usually see Christophe Amon and Michel Bonchemer at the sharp end of this field, but with Amon being turned around on that first lap, it was a bit of an uphill struggle for them. They ended up in 5th position in class, but expect to see them being stronger tomorrow if they can get away from being found in strife. And that is one of the major issues of starting kind of in 30th spot, which is your kind of which is a good position to start if you are an AM, but you are right in the thick of any of the action.
Yeah, they did get roughed up a bit, didn't they?
Oh, it's so likely to happen when you're starting in the middle of the pack there.
Exactly.
We actually have seen Christophe Amon qualify really high up, especially for an AM. And
also, he's going to be doing the 24 hours, so maybe jumping from GT3 to GT4 machinery is a bit of a task. The AMs are the ones that spray, so the winning drivers get a soaking.
I hope they've got a second set of overalls, or an overnight laundry. A lot of the trucks have laundries, don't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily in GT4, but certainly there'll be laundries around the paddock.
So the drivers make their way off the podium.
Very, very happy WS Motorsport.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think we get to Scandinavia, because there are more bottles of champagne being brought out.
How very frustrating to be able to take victory in a race but have no chance at all, really, of celebrating it. They can't possibly even think about even having a small left.
No, that's true.
Because you've got to be back on circuit and clean of alcohol by 10 o'clock in the morning.
There is left 0%. I suppose that's almost acceptable.
Well, yeah. It's a funny party when it's 0% party.
Yeah. Right, so for Scandinavia, let's see whether it's going to be an outright or an AM and a silver here.
There's definitely more than one class, because I noticed that on the graphics.
But for the classification, they've all been lumped together on the timing screen, haven't they? Anyway, we'll come to that in a moment.
Another beautiful evening here at Spa. Spa at its very best when it is not raining. Still feels a little bit different. All that deforestation on the outside of turn 1 there. I believe there's a lot more construction to be done on that point, so it won't look quite as barren.
You've got Lucas Sundal and Marius Solipulsen coming out for third in the Scandinavian contest. There for second place from the Toyota Supra squad from Toyota Racing Sweden. Hans Holmlund and Emil Skog. And then the winners are, as we were saying during the course of the race, Daniel Roos and Eric Behrens.
In honor of the victory, the Swedish national anthem.
So the top 3 drivers overall, also the top 3 in Pro-Am, which means there's an Am class to come. And we'll await confirmation of the order for that. So the championship officials present the trophies.
And a lovely weekend away for the Scandinavians.
Yeah, indeed. Very different circuit, and somewhere that's clearly been a hit with the drivers.
Yeah, they've already raced at Anderstorp at the start of the season. Then they went north to a place that I can't pronounce, which has lots of Ks and As and E's, and certainly not a track that I've ever heard of, but there are plenty in Scandinavia that I don't. And so this is the 3rd round of their championship.
So well done to the GT4 Scandinavia drivers. And they get the champagne and some run, most run in fact. And I think if you've made the effort to come all this long way, you're going to celebrate with the champagne, aren't you? So Daniel Roos, shame we don't see more of him in European racing actually, because he was always very quick when he did come into it. Scores a race win. And so with the podiums done, that completes race 1 from the GT4 European Series. More tomorrow morning, but for now, from Ben Constanduros and David Anderson, it's good night from Spa-Francorchamps.